On today's show, the Lakers respond with a Game 2 win versus the Wolves, but is this one that LA should feel good about? Damian Lillard's return wasn't enough as the Pacers handled business against the Bucks. The Thunder blow out the Grizzlies again, just not by 50. It's all coming up on tonight's Locked on NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked on NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And joining me is my partner in crime, David Ramil, host of Locked On Heat. David, what kind of action did you see in the playoffs last night?
A blowout, some competitive games, and a little chippiness here and there. So a little bit of everything on a night of playoff basketball. Good night to watch the NBA.
Chippiness is always fun in the playoffs. I love it when two teams just have such disdain for one another, and that's exactly what we're going to get to when we talk about Bucks Pacers here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. We are going to talk about Bucks Pacers. We're going to get to them in our second segment, but what we're starting with is the Lakers responding in Game 2 against the Wolves. They come away with the win. Let's go to Locked On Lakers for more.
Minetsky, co-host of the Locked On Lakers podcast, and the Lakers get a 94-85 win over the Minnesota Timberwolves in Game 2, evening up the series at 1 apiece. There had been a lot of talk heading into this game about the Lakers needing to match Minnesota's energy and physicality, and they absolutely met that goal, whether you're talking about aggression, delivering first hits, any criteria. The Lakers absolutely dictated the terms of this game, particularly in the first half. Their defense was spectacular throughout. They lost some of their offensive cohesion and flow in the second half, didn't move the ball as much, only scored 36 points in the second half. But when you win the battle of the boards and you hold a team to 40-20 splits, you can get away with that. For more Lakers coverage, make sure you're watching Locked On Lakers on YouTube and listening wherever you get your podcast.
All right, David. So Lakers come back, they even the series. And to Andy's point, right? First half, defense was solid. They looked competitive. They looked like they were being the aggressors. And you know, it was night and day difference compared from Game 1 to Game 2 here. But to walk away in a game where you only score 94 points, you hold the Wolves to 85, but it kind of felt like, especially in the second half and there in the fourth quarter in particular, a lot of this game kind of felt like self-inflicted wounds from the Wolves a little bit. Is this a win that the Lakers should feel good about in your eyes?
Feeling good. It doesn't seem like it really matters. You get away with the win and you have a couple of days of rest and preparation and game time and, game film and stuff like that, so that you can go into Game 3 and realize what worked and what didn't. And as long as you have Luka Doncic and LeBron James, I think you're in a pretty good place. But you did kind of rely on some things breaking your way, not just the rebounding. Of course, that was really spectacular in terms of how Los Angeles dominated the boards, but Naz Reid getting into foul trouble, not being much of a factor, really taking out a lot of Minnesota's shooting. I don't know. It felt like it might not be sustainable necessarily, and not necessarily something you go away going, this is a comfortable win and we're feeling really confident going into the series or continuing with the series. I wouldn't go that far, but a win's a win. You take it however you can get it and hope that maybe Game 3 breaks a little bit better your way if you're a Los Angeles Lakers fan.
You know what? That's fair. Maybe I phrased that poorly because I guess it's just nothing in this game to me screamed that, the Lakers suddenly figured out the Wolves or they have the recipe.
There was no
for
dominance
success.
there.
Yeah, no, it was just kind of like, you scraped by, you got to win. I think you went from the Wolves who had, this superb shooting Game 1 into an awful shooting Game 2. Now, credit to the Lakers defense. They did a much better job, getting out to shooters, right, running them off the three-point line, not giving up just like the blatantly like wide open shots that they were giving up there in game one with no effort, no intensity. You even saw it early in that third quarter. Lakers came out of the half and they were sloppy playing out of the half. And JJ Redick was livid. He called that timeout at one point. You had him under the basket, Mike getting caught up, and you had JJ Redick cussing out his team under the basket. So he wasn't happy with the effort, and that timeout definitely kind of lit a fire under them, and they were able to kind of regain their composure, take control of the game again. But the Wolves made this thing a game. They cut it to single digits multiple times there in the fourth quarter. But the closing sequence of this game was just disastrous for the Wolves. Let's hear what Locked On Wolves had to say about this one.
The Timberwolves fall by 9 points in Game 2 to the Lakers. The series is tied at 1 apiece, headed back to Minnesota for Game 3. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the daily Locked On Wolves podcast. And after the Wolves beat the Lakers by 22 points in Game 1, you knew LA was going to throw a haymaker early, and they did. They held Minnesota to 15 points in the first quarter. The Wolves were down 19 by the time the second quarter started. The Wolves offense struggled mightily in this game. Credit the Lakers for being a lot more active and physical on the defensive end. Minnesota only had one quarter in which they scored more than 22 points. And on the night, the Wolves shot just 38% after making 21 three-pointers in Game 1. They made just 5 three-pointers in this game, 20% from outside the arc. And it was a physical game, to be sure. The Wolves never got going offensively. LA was so much more physical than they were in Game 1. The ball movement, the quick decision-making, it just wasn't there for the Wolves. The decision-making was much slower in this game, much more methodical, and it came back to bite them to the tune of 85 points on 38% shooting. Again, series split in LA, headed back to Minnesota for Game 3. We're going to have you covered all week at Locked On Wolves.
The close to this one, David,
Yeah,
Minnesota had a chance like late in this game. They were, single digits, and they had 4 straight offensive possessions, 4 straight turnovers. They had it down to a 9-point deficit. Then Ant turned the ball over. It was a great steal by LeBron James, kind of shot the gap there as Ant was trying to bring the ball up the court in transition. Then they had a shot clock violation the next play. Then you had a Julius Randle drive and turnover in traffic. And then to cap it all off, you had Jade McDaniels, who charged directly into Austin Reeves. So great defensive play by Reeves to draw that charge. It just again, I feel like there were so many self-inflicted wounds from the Wolves here where they, like to Ben's point, right? They just never found it offensively in this game, and everything was so disjointed. And I just don't know how much of that is to credit, the Lakers defense. I want to give them some credit for that. But at the same time, like, I don't expect the Wolves to put up another game like this one in the entire series, probably.
it's possible. It feels like that style of play, though, kind of benefits the Lakers in terms of just dragging things through the mud, slowing things down, controlling the pace, and letting LeBron and Luka kind of work in half-court sets in order to kind of generate offense from that point of view. And then Minnesota's transition game, and that's a disadvantage that the Lakers can't afford to get into. So aside from that, though, I see your point in terms of, Minnesota can play better than what they did tonight. They kind of did allow the Lakers to set the tone early on, and maybe they respond differently. But at the same time, you have to credit the Lakers for being able to impose their will and kind of imprint the game with the way that they thought was most comfortable for them to lead to a victory. And it certainly turned out that way. Having said that, Minnesota probably won't shoot 20% from three-point range again. I don't think a lot of that was due to the Lakers defense. Like, certainly they were doing a pretty good job of challenging them and challenging three-point shooters, kind of running them off the line and stuff like that. But there were a number of possessions there that were wide open shots that they just couldn't seem to knock those down. You have to get much more productive offense. And I'm not sure where you're getting it from. On a night when you get 27 points on 9 to 17 shooting from Julius Randle, you get 25 points from Ant. Like, somebody else has to find a way to step up, and you're not getting kind of any production from anywhere else.
Well, the bench guys were huge, right? Their bench trio were magnificent in game one. They combined for 39 points, and those guys were all in foul trouble this game. Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, they were largely kept off the court because of that foul trouble. They combined in this game for just 17 points compared to the 39 that they had combined, that trio, including Gilgeous-Alexander Walker in game one. So that was a just gigantic drop off from their production in game one. And that goes back to, again, kind of the self-inflicted issues. Like, it's just some of the fouls that those guys were committing were just poor game plan discipline, reaching, slapping, gambling, little things that you can't do when you're as important to the fabric of the team's success. And I do think that those guys being in foul trouble kind of prevented having that bench pop that you normally rely on if you're the Wolves. And so I kind of think that with this series shifting back to Minnesota for the next 2 games, I don't know. I'm really liking the Wolves here in this series. But coming up, a series where the two teams do not like each other. The Bucks and Pacers, things getting absolutely chippy. Dame's return in this series wasn't enough as the Pacers still walk away with the win. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, there's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels absolutely huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. I love Game Time because they're fully transparent. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay, but the last-minute deals are absolutely killer. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for playoff games, for concerts, comedy events, theater, whatever's happening near you. Get your tickets and don't worry about the hassle. Game Time makes it so seamless. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Game Night, where we thank you for making Game Night your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, go check out David over at Locked On Heat. Come check me out over at Locked On Rockets. Go find the Locked On Show for your favorite team. Let's get out to our next game of the night, where the NBA's most overrated player led his team to a 2-0 series lead against the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's go out to Locked On Pacers for more.
Teams are supposed to protect home court, and the Indiana Pacers did that again today. 123-115 final score as they beat the Bucks and go up 2-0 in their series. Tony East here with Locked On Pacers. Both games have felt very similar to me in this series for the Pacers. Obviously, big adjustments from both teams. Damian Lillard played once and not the other time, and he returned today. We can talk about that in a second, but the Pacers have had very little trouble getting the shots they want in either of these games so far, whether it's because Tyrese Haliburton is playing excellent basketball, creating shots for himself or others, whether it's Pascal Siakam being a great playoff player, whether it's Andrew Nembhard rising to the occasion for the second postseason in a row, or whether it's the Bucks not having defensive answers that they need. The Pacers have had no trouble scoring, and they didn't again today, up double digits for what felt like the whole game. Huge Bucks run late, 13-0 to make it a 2-point game. Pacers come out, answer immediately, 2 quick threes from Pascal Siakam and Andrew Nembhard, and it's over. They're up 2-0. They're going to Milwaukee, and they've got to feel great about how they're playing. We'll have much more on Locked On Pacers.
Tony covered it beautifully there. Pacers were just fully in control of this game from the jump. Outside of that late run by the Bucks, where they got a couple, Bobby Portis threes, then Dame hit his one and only bucket of the second half with, kind of a long ball three to cut it to a 2-point game. But then Pacers get the response there, a couple threes, and they kind of ride that wave and they wrap this thing up. David, I just watching the Pacers play offense, their offense is so seamless. It feels like any one of their guys on the court at any given time can put the ball on the deck and create and make something happen. And first, I just love watching this Pacers team. They are electric. They're fun to watch play. Tyrese Haliburton, I don't know how he got, I'm not going to crash out as hard as Rick Carlisle did about the whole most overrated player thing, because he had some very choice words about that poll and Tyrese Haliburton's, being crowned the most overrated player in the NBA. But I don't know, just watching him play, 21 points, 12 assists, 8 of 19 shooting. Well, not quite his night from beyond the arc, just 3 of 10 there, but just always has a great pulse on the game, great ability to find guys, and just across the board, great all-around scoring effort from this Pacers team. 6 different guys in double figures.
Yeah, I thought he was sensational, but you're right. Their offense was just fluid, humming along, and Tyrese was certainly at the forefront, making things happen for himself and for others on this team. But you also have to look at the flip side of things. Milwaukee is just really porous defensively. They just don't seem to have an answer for Indiana. And look, Indiana's strong offensive group, certainly. So that the Bucks were going to be challenged, but they've had defensive issues all season long, and that's certainly still the case going into this matchup. You look in that game 2 matchup, and the Bucks just didn't seem to have an answer for anything that the Bucks were doing, whether it was at the rim or from beyond the arc. They just couldn't really close out. There was no intensity, no understanding exactly of what Indiana was trying to do offensively, and no way really of stopping them. So a little surprising from where this Bucks team was just a couple years ago as a great defensive group. And now they were really, well, the exact opposite of that in their matchup against Indiana.
Yeah, it feels like the Bucks have gotten so far away from that identity that made them champions just a couple short years ago, right? And one of the biggest pieces here is, like, I know that they had to feel like they felt like they had to do something at the trade deadline, right? And so they go get Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma just does not give them anything close to what, Chris Middleton used to give this team, right? Middleton could give you the playmaking. He gave you better defense. He gave you so much that made this Bucks team really lethal at times. And Kuzma just, nothing in game one. Here in game two, just 12 points, 5 of 10 shooting, missed all 3 of his threes, had a chance late to hit a big 3 that would have kept the Bucks in it, kept things competitive, would have cut it to, I believe at that point, a 5-point game with about a minute and a half left to go. So, I mean, I feel like, and he doesn't play big at all. Only 3 rebounds, right? They just don't have enough outside of Giannis and Dame. And even in this game, they didn't even have Dame, right? It was Giannis and Bobby Portis carrying the load for the Bucks. And granted, look, first game back for Dame. Glad that he's healthy first and foremost, but to see him like in game one, talking all that trash from the bench, and then he's back in game two, he's talking trash. He and Tyrese Haliburton getting into it. It was getting chippy at one point. Obviously there's history there with those guys, with Tyrese Haliburton going back to last season with the in-season tournament, the Dame time on the watch situation. I love a good rivalry between two teams that just flat out do not like each other. I feel like we don't get enough of that anymore in today's NBA. And I love watching these two teams play because they just do not care for one another at all.
Yeah, you can sense it. I mean, it's pretty visceral, and it kind of permeates at any opportunity. It seems like things are ready to go off. At one point, Gary Trent Jr. knocks Pascal Siakam. I don't think it was as egregious as maybe some people thought it was, but Siakam rises up looking for a fight, and you just know that at some point something is going to happen. And I figure once Milwaukee goes back home, they're feeling a little bit more confident. They play much better at home than they do on the road. And you assume that they'll probably show out a little bit and kind of punch Indiana, not literally in the face, but they might do so. You never know between these two teams. They might actually try something to kind of just get an edge and kind of remind them, hey, you know what? You still have to go through us in order to keep climbing up the playoff standing. So we'll see how it works out. I mean, Milwaukee, their defensive issues notwithstanding, you have to get more production from Dame. I don't know about Kuzma. They made a great point in the broadcast that maybe a couple of years in Washington and so far removed from where he was as a champion with the Lakers has kind of just taken away his competitive spirit. Like he's not really aware anymore of what it takes to kind of take your game to another level in a playoff scenario. I don't know if I buy that necessarily. That might be going a little bit too deep into the whole couch psychology. But at the same time, like he's just not a factor, and you're not getting anything from Lillard. Somebody needs to step up, and I don't know who that is aside from Bobby Portis tonight. He was sensational, but you're going to need to get somebody else to be a little bit more productive. And you assume it's Dame. Like maybe with a little bit more rest now between games 2 and 3, he can rise up to the big time player that he's always been in clutch situations.
Let's hear from Locked On Bucks really quick about this loss now being down 0-2.
The return of Damian Lillard is not enough for the Bucks to take game 2 in Indiana, and now they're down 0-2 heading back to Milwaukee on Friday. The Bucks game 2 effort was better than what we had in game 1, having Dame back on there helped with the offense, but the defense is still a problem for this Milwaukee Bucks team. Also really difficult for this team to have to continue to dig themselves out of holes late in games. Doc Rivers has seemed a little bit hesitant over the last few weeks to do any lineup changes, but after this game, it seems that it's at least something that's going to be under consideration. And after seeing the results in this game and which lineups seem to work, it seems like a series where a little bit less Brook Lopez, a little bit of less Taurean Prince will be good for the Bucks against the Pacers and how they're looking to play. Bucks switched a lot more in this game than they did in game 1, which I think is the way forward. But again, having the right guys out there on the court to help execute the scheme is going to be important. Bucks have to execute better in game 3. They have to execute better, period, for a chance to win in this series.
Maybe we'll see Bobby Portis. I don't know if we'll see a full-blown starting lineup change. That'd be a crazy outcome. But Bobby Portis was incredibly effective in this game, a +1 in an 8-point loss. They flat out won the Bobby Portis minutes. Now, some of that has to do with him just being unconscious. 28 points, 6 of 11 from downtown. So I don't know how likely you are to replicate that performance from Bobby Portis, but the defense did look considerably better out there, even though Brook Lopez had like a handful of monster blocks in this game. Like he was defending the paint at what felt like a pretty high level, but those moments were so few and far between, the possessions where the Pacers were just whipping the ball around the perimeter and finding open looks and getting guys open or getting guys attacking, and you get a paint touch and then a kick out for an open shot. Brook Lopez just might not be the guy in this series that they need him to be, and that's not that's not an indictment of Brook Lopez as a player. It's just, it could just be a very poor matchup for him, unfortunately, for the Bucks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Only 16 minutes in the night. Obviously more Portis getting twice that much playing time. I don't know how much more playing time he can possibly get than what we saw tonight, but maybe may get a couple more minutes here for AJ Green to kind of space the floor a little bit. Kevin Porter Jr. getting a little bit too much playing time as well. And Taurean Prince with 19 minutes and only 6 points in that. He was okay, maybe not even okay, but I wanted to feel generous a little bit. And I don't know. He's just not really much of a factor out there. And that's too many non-factors aside from either Portis or Antetokounmpo. So somebody else has to find a way to step up and produce a little bit more.
I just want to say really quickly before we move on to our final game of the night, Andrew Nembhard is a gamer. That guy can play. Like every time I watch him play, I feel like he's doing something ridiculous. And I'm not going to go and I'm not going to be like, oh my God, is Andrew Nembhard like a star? But he is a playoff riser. That dude's a playoff riser. The step back that he had, the looking off Pascal Siakam and then pulling that step back 3 over Giannis, just tough, just nails. 17 points, 6 of 10 shooting in this game, just fearless, to go along with 6 dimes. I really love watching him play. I think he's got an incredibly bright future ahead of him. Coming up, we got our final game of the evening. The Thunder blowing out the Grizzlies again in game 2, but not by 50. So some improvement for Memphis. Does Memphis have a chance at winning even one game in this series? We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. You can play high quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost. Plus, with 4K streaming, you watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. Head on over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd generation. And final segment here at Locked On NBA Game Night. Let's get to our final game of the evening. The OKC Thunder blowing out the Memphis Grizzlies again in game 2. Let's tune into Locked On Thunder and hear what they had to say about this one.
Different verse, same as the first. Oklahoma City gets a lopsided win over the Memphis Grizzlies in game number 2 of the first round series. SGA still does not have his fastball in this series yet, has not scored the ball super efficiently, but it's been leaps from Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren to really push this team over the hump and get them some lopsided wins. You see tonight, the additions of Hartenstein, the additions of Caruso makes this team completely different in a playoff setting. They played suffocating defense against Memphis. They could not even get the ball up the court at times. They couldn't get into their possessions, and they could not start their actions. Credit to Memphis, they played slightly better than in game 1. They did make a run in the third quarter to make it an 8-point game. From there, it was SGA with a couple threes to really grow that lead back out. And in the fourth quarter, it was Chet and J-Dub that stood up and were able to blow the game wide open yet again. The Thunder look completely different from a year ago, and they continue their dominance.
Dominance is absolutely right. Look, it didn't matter who, let me backtrack 1 second here. if the Warriors had somehow slipped into that 8th seed, right, this would be a lot more of a competitive series between OKC and Golden State. But I still don't see, like, just looking at how this Thunder team plays, they can play so many different styles. They can play the double big. They can go small. They've got this incredible historic defense. You've got the, potentially the MVP candidate in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, NBA's leading scorer, great supporting cast with Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. And, the knock on the Thunder last year was, they're young, they're inexperienced. And that's still going to kind of be the knock on them this year until they prove it against, a better opponent than the first round Grizzlies. But I just don't see a world where this Thunder team doesn't just blaze through this Western Conference, David.
It seems, look, somebody's going to challenge them at some point. I don't know which team it is. Honestly, I see the rest of the West, and it's going to be tough to see if there's going to be a legitimate challenge there. I don't mean, aside from maybe the finals matchup with the Cleveland Cavaliers or Boston Celtics, I don't know who else is really going to be as much of a challenge there. And maybe we shouldn't pen them right into the NBA finals at this point, but they've looked so dominant through the first 2 games, and you could write it off and say, they're playing at home, etc. But no, it's just the way they do it. The fact that they were able to control the game so completely, rebounding the heck out of the Memphis Grizzlies, dominating the possession battle, taking 104 field goal attempts at just 91 for Memphis, and forcing 14 turnovers to just 7. Like, they're so efficient, they're so effective. They control the tempo. They play at their pace. They never seem to get rattled despite their youth. And they have, as you said, so many different ways that they can beat you. On a night when your leading scorer is, quote unquote, only scoring 27 points and you get so much production from everybody else, it's a guy like Alex Caruso having big moments with 5 steals there, or I'm sorry, 3 steals, and making a real impact over the course of the third quarter, right when that lead was getting attacked to some degree. This Hartenstein making a big play after big play. They have so many different weapons. They're so deep. They're so good. And you forget about, you don't really forget, but that at some point they're going to have to cash in all those draft picks, and who knows what this team's going to be. Like, this is a dynasty in the making.
It really is. And it sucks from the Grizzlies side of things, because this is not a bad Grizzlies team. It's not. Like, I know they've been kind of in free fall since, like, the firing Taylor Jenkins, and that was a questionable decision here at the end of the season, just before the postseason was about to start. And not that Taylor Jenkins is the reason that they're down 0-2 in this series. Like, I don't think he's going to be the difference maker here for this team. But even at various points in this game, right, you didn't get OKC's quote unquote best punch in this game, right? SGA took 29 shots to get 27 points. Like, that is a horribly inefficient night, but it just didn't matter. And just at every turn, whenever the Grizzlies started to make like a little bit of a run, right, at first they put themselves in this massive hole in the first quarter. Ja Morant started the game like 0-5, 0-6, didn't hit a shot until I think it was the second quarter when he finally knocked one down. But OKC jumps out to a 32-17 lead, and then they're able to just kind of coast off of that, right? Grizzlies matched them almost point for point there in the second quarter, and then they actually win the third quarter. But how much of that was the Grizzlies actually finding something like good to tap into versus the Thunder just kind of like taking the foot off the gas a little bit? When you're up 15-20 and you've been coasting for most of the night, it's human nature to kind of ease up a little bit. And then when they needed to, they tighten back up, and then that's it. They close things out in the fourth quarter. Can the Grizzlies win a single game this series, David, or are they just going to get swept?
I think a sweep is likely. I don't think this Oklahoma City team, despite their youth or inexperience or whatever you might want to look at, I think they understand what's at stake here. And I think Memphis has kind of shown that they're a little bit broken, or maybe might be missing something of what this team has been like in the last couple of seasons, when they were kind of unexpectedly really, really great. And, one of those underdog teams that kind of just rose to the challenge and was really dominating sometimes and some opportunities there. They seem a little broken. And we've talked about it before on this podcast. They just don't seem to have that same identity that they once did. So I don't know that they're going to be able to do anything effectively enough to beat a team as good as Oklahoma City. And again, this is perhaps the worst matchup it could be for a team that's kind of struggling right now to find their purpose and find their identity. A team that's as good as the Oklahoma City Thunder, and we keep writing them off despite the fact that they won 68 games during the regular season. I mean, that's unbelievable. They're just a really damn good team, and people have to understand that. And so it's going to be a very difficult challenge for Memphis to make, I think, even a game competitive, to be honest with you.
Look, and I don't want to dog this Memphis team too much because, again, they're going up against a historically great Thunder team, and they're not even 100% healthy, right? They're missing Jalen Wells, they're missing Brandon Clark. Those are two very key guys to what they'd like to do, and I think people maybe forget how young this Grizzlies team is as well. They're an incredibly young team, right? Like they lost, the Grizzlies teams that were, at the top of the Western Conference back-to-back seasons a couple years ago, right? They lost some of the veterans, quote unquote, that kind of, gave them some of that maturity, right? And kind of helped them along during those playoff runs, right? They lost Steven Adams. They lost Dylan Brooks. They're both on the Rockets now, but those are two key guys, and they've got now, they were starting two rookies in those spots at the 3 and at the 5 this season. So I think this Grizzlies team is not necessarily far away from being like back in the contention category, but they've got to revisit. They're going to have to figure out the coaching situation this offseason. They've got a lot to look at, but there's still so much talent on this roster. And you've got the big three of Ja, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane, and there's a lot to like with that trio. I don't know. I'm not down on the Grizzlies by any stretch, but it's just like tough draw to go up against the Thunder here in the first round. But sorry, go ahead. I want to see up our Locked On Grizzlies guy in a second too.
Yeah, this is less about the Grizzlies' problems than it is more about the Thunder's strengths, to be honest with you. That's fair, and that's probably the lens that we should look at it through. Let's hear from Locked On Grizzlies really quick after this one.
Is there such a thing as a competitive blowout loss? I'm asking for some friends. They didn't lose by 51. That's a positive, but the Grizzlies still lose by a sizable margin at the hands of the clearly better Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies, and you can't convince me otherwise. I saw it with my own eyes. Memphis was within 6 in the third quarter, and you could almost sense a little bit of concern from those in OKC. And then the Thunder remembered that they are the superior team with better talent and depth, and to be honest with you, better defensive effort and offensive energy, and they just dominated the Grizzlies to close the contest. Jaren Jackson Jr. had a better showing, especially in the second half. Jaren Jackson Jr. continues to struggle passing out of double teams. The Thunder are the team that is playing with a hunger and a desperation to show that they are truly the best team in the NBA. Memphis has been unable to match that for a full 48 minutes to this point in the series.
And it feels, unfortunately, for the Memphis Grizzlies, unlikely that they'll be able to match it at any point in this series. I agree with you, David. I think we're headed for a Thunder sweep in this one. That is going to do it for our edition of Locked On NBA Game Night, 3-game slate. We want to see you guys right back here for our next Game Night episode. We've got you covered for all of the playoff action right here. Thanks so much for being here with us on Locked On NBA Game Night. For your next listen, go find the Locked On Show for your favorite team. Until then, we'll catch you guys on our very next Game Night.